Yeah, I'm gonna be recording what I'm saying so that other people can just listen to it and don't have to. I don't have maybe some of the things you ask are good enough for other people. So that's why I have my microphone near me.
Okay.
Is that good?
Yes. Can you
Okay.
hear us?
Yes, I can hear you guys. Good. Okay, good. So, basically, the purpose of this meeting is for me to meet you, Eugene, and get to connect a little bit, but also answer all the questions that you might have. I've talked with Lani several times already, so I've gotten to hear her heart a little bit. It's as the head of your family. I wanted to hear from you too and see how you feel and what your questions might be that you have.
Well, Eugene's actually my father's name. We're using his Skype account. My name's Andrew.
Oh, sorry, sorry,
That's
sorry.
okay.
Okay, good, Andrew. I'm sorry. Okay, good.
No problem. And
Okay.
actually, quite a few of the emails from Lonnie were after her and I talked, and then I went to work the next day, so she typed the email up and sent it to you.
Okay.
So you've gotten a little bit of both of us in those.
Oh, okay. Perfect. Perfect. I'm glad to hear that. Okay, so what questions, pressing questions or something you don't understand in the whole process, we can start from there and other things can come up.
I think the major thing is your thoughts on older children integrating into a family that's got a younger child and the different concerns and considerations, sort of like what Lonnie had put in her email, the last email she sent on that topic. Just get your thoughts in some more detail.
Okay. From a personal point of view, the way I like to make my decisions most of the time, is to try to see if there's any biblical precedence or any inclination on the part of the Bible on what direction to take. I also, as a medical doctor by training, I'm interested in seeing if there is any evidence that there is any psychological harm or any medical thing besides on a spiritual level. So I'm interested in that. I honestly haven't seen anything in terms of on the medical side of bringing an older child into a family that would not be applicable to a younger child. So I couldn't say, I would say from a medical point of view that that's something that holds. Maybe some other people have evidence that I don't know. On a spiritual level, I also don't see any scriptural basis for that. The only reasons that I've heard people give about that, people who have been, when I've confronted them, they've been honest to say, hey, we want to have our first child be the oldest, because of authority reasons in the family and because of inheritance and things like that, which to me sound a little bit selfish. If you're gonna adopt a child, you should adopt thinking that if whatever decisions we're gonna make, that child is gonna be chosen just with the same chance that any other child that you had. So I've not really seen any solid reason that children children that are older would beat the younger children. Honestly, I've seen younger people who are adopted who are aggressive, and they would almost beat the older child, and the older child wouldn't be able to slap them back because they're holding back. They would do things and throw things at the older child who could totally beat them up. Say, you bring a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old into the family, and there you have a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old. That 6-year-old could totally probably beat the little one, but if it's aggressive, he's not gonna do it because he's been trained not to hit back. So yeah, I wouldn't advise if you brought a a 5-year-old adopted child to leave your 2-year-old child in the house with them, or unsupervised. I mean,
Hmm.
because kids could, even your own kids, they could do something wrong to the child.
Right.
So, so I would advise watching carefully, as the adopted child adapts to your home. This adoption is very stressful, more stressful than the people adopting can stop and think. Most of the children that are adopted, they've lost father and mother. Some of them have been abused. In addition to that, and even if they live in their own country, any doctor would tell you if you lose a loved one, just one, it could cause depression in some people, and it's serious. Now you've lost two. If look, and some of them have not only lost two, they've lived in conditions where they've been malnourished before, and maybe they've been abused physically or psychologically in a lot of ways. Other children telling them, cursing them, and kids do little things to each other, call names that could be very serious. So, and then you take them now, already shaky, already shaky, and you bring them into a new culture where they have no friends whatsoever. They don't know the language or the culture. Everything is totally new. It's a lot of stuff. So that's not to say that you shouldn't do that, but it's to say that know that even a normal person, when subjected to that kind of thing, could kind of go a little bit up here, may not be so balanced up there a little bit. You can make poor judgments. If even an adult was subjected to that kind of stress after stress after stress. So it's not a thing that the kids are bad, but I mean, if you go through that kind of hardship, most people, in the U.S., if they went through that, they would make poor decisions too, and they could be rebellious or shout or scream and hit people sometimes. But
Right.
in that case, you'd have to gradually work with them, pay more attention to them, lovingly take them through that stage until they calm down. The case we have in Waco, two kids from our orphanage were adopted, and they're in Waco now, here in Texas. The first few months were not easy, honestly. But right now, they're normal kids. It's been like a year and a half. They're normal kids. You couldn't even tell the difference. No behavioral problems whatsoever.
Wow.
I would anticipate that it would be a very interesting, to say the least, transition process, because you got the culture shock, in addition to all of the trauma they've already gone through, and that's a big stressor in their lives, and we know it'll be stressor in our lives, but we think it's worth it. So I would anticipate some of that. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to anticipate all of it, having not gone through it yet.
I guess one question I would have would be, like, I can watch them obviously during the day, but what about sleeping arrangements at night? What would you suggest for that? We do have, if we adopted two children, we do have enough rooms to have each kid in a separate room. I guess I'm just asking, how should we? I can't watch them at night. So
Yeah.
what sort of safety precautions should we have for that?
I honestly don't think that you should worry about watching kids at night, um, because
You know, I just read this
because
book on reactive attachment disorder, and they have like alarms on the doors for their kids and everything else so that they know when the kids are coming out of their rooms, and because they have all these problem children that they watch. So
I I honestly don't think it would get that bad. But is it okay, let me put it this way. Do people who have their own children in the US, mom and dad, their own biological children, ever have reason to put alarms on their doors? Yeah, they do. Just ask your pediatrician; they'll tell you yes, they do. Do people even People even put helmets on their kids sometimes if the kids are too, like, they just play too much, and perhaps they have some kind of disorder, like a bleeding disorder or something like that, that they don't want them to get hurt and they couldn't be stilled. So do kids in the US have ADHD? Sure, they have that. Like, kids, younger and younger kids now are getting diagnosed with ADHD and things like that. So it does happen for kids here. Just study or look at kids in the foster care in the US here. They have they have gone through some of the challenges that the kids you'll be bringing in would have gone through. The good thing with us, we do a fairly good job and in taking care of children while they're in our orphanage. We have standards that, honestly, are very high in terms of our healthcare and caring for orphans, and we're increasingly providing more options for taking care of the kids. Like, in September, we're going to institute a counseling program. I'm going to Cameroon with a counselor, somebody who is a counselor here in the U.S. We're going to start a counseling program, and we have teaching programs that we're going to be training a lot of the staff that take care of our kids to be way more, a lot better than they are right now. And that's not something that happens in every orphanage that you adopt a child from. So where you adopt the child from, it's a little helpful. And also, what I want to add to that is, if what I imagine is that they will be tired during the day, like any other child, playing all day, like, and doing things. When it's bedtime, they should be tired too, and they will be sleeping. Yeah. So if you give them long naps, like a 2 hours nap or something like that, well, if they are not sleeping, then they may be exploring things. So even my own kids, I have two little kids. Joshua is 3.5 and Caleb is 2. Whenever we let them sleep during the day, like 2 hours, sometimes when sometimes we let them do that, if we're in the middle of something. Well, Caleb will hit the wall, like, of their room, all for like a while, until we go either stop him, and he's too young to understand some of the things we don't want him to do. He's like 2 years. It's difficult for us to stop Caleb from doing that. He's a good kid, but he'll be playing and talking and singing. You say, "Don't talk, okay, Caleb?" "Yeah." And then when you leave, he continues to talk. So if that happens, if that happens to somebody who brought a child in, and they were doing that at 3 years old, and you tell them things and they don't hear, they're like this, including the other challenges of adoption, that would kind of be, you may see it a little differently.
How many kids are in the orphanage in Cameroon, and do you have more than one there that you work in?
Okay. We have one orphanage that is part of our organization that we control everything, that we founded and control everything. But the way our organization works is more of a movement, where our goal is to raise the standards of healthcare, of orphan care in orphanages, all over the place. So we have other orphanages that we help out. And sometimes when we have more resources than we need, we've given money to them, to other orphanages in Cameroon. And in September, we're going to have, at least right now, 5 people from different countries in Africa and 1 from Nepal who are coming to our training school in Cameroon to get trained. And some will be there for like 2 years, train and work there and learn how we do things, so they can go to their countries and serve orphans. And when these people go, having been trained by us, we'll support them, and sometimes we might even have people adopt from there if we have people who are interested. So we we have an orphanage that is named after our organization, Shaping Destiny. We used to have 85 children in that orphanage up to last year, and we started a new program that was a foster care program. It's about 2 years ago actually, and that program we found to be so successful, and it helps us use the local people in the work of orphan care. So we are now switching things. The people who are really orphans in our orphanage are either people who are on the way to be adopted, or people who are really really bad, and they probably they came in were malnourished really bad, and so they need to be fed a little differently, that you can't just put them in a local home. So we have 30 kids in there right now in the orphanage, but we have kids now in the foster care system that we take care of.
Okay.
What's your experience with what some of the unique challenges can be for interracial adoptions?
Okay. Honestly speaking, there are challenges in two areas that I know, and I'm going to be very honest with you because I see no reason not to be.
We appreciate it.
I have wanted to adopt for a long time now, and I still plan to adopt. There is something in us, in me in particular, that I've kind of worked on, and I'm dealing with it to the point where it's going away. But initially, I wanted to adopt, but I didn't want to adopt a child of the same race as me, because I wanted people to be able to see from a distance and know, hey, this guy is actually adopted. You know, and it wasn't like I was not going to love the child like my own. I was going to do everything for the child, but there was that wanting to, wanting people to know, and that's not very godly. That's not a godly motive, and many people, honestly, the way adoption is received in the U.S., whether you're a Christian or not, adoption is cool. Angelina Jolie and Brad and all those people, they're adopting. They're not adopting because they're Christians. A lot of atheists, gay people, straight people, all kinds of people are wanting to adopt. Muslims, Indians, or Hindus, they're adopting. There is something about adoption which is a lot of sacrifice, but it doesn't take a Christian to adopt, or it doesn't even take God to tell you to adopt. There's just something about our flesh that makes adoption, good. We want it. God doesn't have to speak to us at all to want it as a Christian. And so we need to be very careful and really try to do something that George Mueller, there's a guy called George Mueller who used to be a powerful man of prayer in England, and he ran a lot of orphanages there and took care of orphans. When he went to pray and ask God for something, he was powerful at prayer. Throughout his life, he had about 50,000 prayers answered. Those were his own records that he kept, and over 30,000 of them were like in the same day, 24 hours. So when he would go to pray, he said the first thing that he does is he tries to get his will to a state where, get himself to a state where he has no will of his own. He's just put himself on neutral. And he says 90% of the work of finding out what God's will is done at that level. Then after that, he prays and seeks and searches the scriptures. The trouble I see with us is that many of us as Christians, we feel the same passion, that Angelina Jolie would feel, or another atheist or a gay person would feel, and that passion is strong. It's when you talk to people who are atheists, they too stay up at night when they're waiting for their adopted children. They are nervous. Many of them start praying prayers even though they don't believe in God. when that's happening. So the same exact things that Christians would go through, and a Christian would easily say, "Oh, this is a sign that God is, that they are sacrificing." But the atheist does exactly the same thing. So going into it, we need to tackle the first part of really being careful, seeking and asking, okay, is this really God's will, or do I have some of my childhood desires of adopting that have kind of grown with me? It doesn't mean that because you've had it for many years, is that it's from God. There are people who have all kinds of ideas for years and years that don't come from God. So, of course, adoption is very biblical. It's very biblical. It doesn't mean that because it's biblical, you can't approach it the wrong way. A guy called A.W. Tozer that I like to read quite a bit. He said something about motive, and he basically said that no act that is done that comes out of an evil motive can ever be pleasing to God or acceptable. In fact, when you do something out of an evil motive, and it doesn't matter if you know it's an evil motive or not, you actually do it for Satan, not for God. So it'll be like, what, can I adopt and have an evil motive? Yeah, you can. But is adoption totally godly and good? Yes, absolutely, 100% is good. So I challenge people to really think and say, okay, am I wanting to adopt because of me? Or am I wanting to adopt because of the orphan? Now, that's a tough question that needs to be answered honestly. Now, the easy thing is to say, oh, of course it's about the orphan, that's why I'm adopting. But not necessarily, and in many cases, it's many people don't adopt because of the orphan. They have a desire. Some people want to increase their family. They want to build a family. Building a family is not a good reason to adopt. It's not. Look at God. Okay, God teaches us the example of adoption by adopting us as his children. Why does God adopt us? Because God needs some kind of to build a family? No. God is totally happy as the Trinity. There, God needs nothing whatsoever. God adopts because of us, to save us and to give us something we don't have. So it's not about us. Honestly, if there were a way for God to make us who we're going to be when we go to heaven without us being God's children, God would have chosen that path. It's just that God wants to do the best for us, and that best for us is that we become like him and be his children. And so he does that. We must have that kind of heart when we approach adoption. We're saying, I'm adopting not because of me, not because I had a dream when I was young, not because I want to build my family, but because I want to do what is best for the orphan. If you start thinking like that, you've won most of the battle. And then, because that would lead you to now start saying, okay, now, what is the best way to help the orphan? What is the best way? And you start looking. Adoption is not the only way. And it goes case by case. Okay, adoption is not the best case for every child. And if you go to an adoption agency and want to adopt, honestly, even if the adoption agency is run by some of the best Christians, there's this thing that if the only tool that you have in your box is a hammer, everything you see is a nail, and you gotta hit it. You can't be an adoption agency and have people wanting to adopt, and then you don't find children for them to adopt. So you basically, so many adoption agencies do a good job, but from the get-go, the fact that adoption is the only tool in their box makes it kind of, they have to adopt it. Their doors have to be open, and they can't just go for a year without adopting because they didn't find an adoptable child. So yeah, on that part of the person, I advise that. I sometimes when I talk like this, people are like, do you really want to adopt to us or not? I'm like, please, I want, I quit my medical career to do this, and I don't get paid. Okay, I could be making at least $200,000 a year working as a physician. I do this. I want to help you adopt, but I also, as a brother in Christ, I want to help you do something that when you get to stand before God, God will be proud of you. Not to kind of help you do something just because you want to meet some goals that you bring. So I challenge people and then help them. And now on the side of the orphan, the challenge, of course, I know I answered this question. I took a long time answering it. Sorry, but there are challenges on the side of the orphan, because when they come to a new culture, of course, you could imagine that yourself. Everything is going to be new, and so yeah, that's something to consider carefully.
I guess I have a question with regards to the reason for adopting. I understand it's about the orphan here, but if you are saying that that's the only reason, then I just kind of feel like it puts you in the savior position, like all these children, the orphan needs me, so I'm in the savior position. I'm going to go save this orphan. And I don't necessarily feel like that's like the best reason either to adopt, is to go make yourself feel good and be the savior for this kid.
Oh no, I hope I didn't give that.
To add the child to your family, like wanting to have an orphan as a part of your family, or have a child that doesn't have a home as part of your family, to build your family or to be part of your family. I guess I don't feel like that's a bad reason.
Okay, let me show you another example in the Bible of adoption that was done very well biblically. When Israel was dying in Egypt, he adopted the children, the two children, Manasseh and the other guy, the two children that belonged to Joseph, the first two borns that he had with a wife he married in Egypt. Now, and he took them onto his laps, and he told Joseph, these children will be counted as mine. And the reason he did that was not, he was dying. It was not because he wanted to build a family. Was because when the tribes of Israel were being counted, Israel wanted to give an inheritance to the children of Joseph. And so when Jesus comes and picks the 12 disciples, and the 12 tribes will be counted when Jesus comes. That's what Israel wanted to do. If honestly, self-centeredness is very subtle. When you say, I want to build what about the child's desires? Okay, think. This child is 5 years old. This child is 5 years old, or whatever, how many years. Now, the mother who delivered the child, how about her desires? One of the most important scriptures that we have to work with is love your neighbor as yourself. Mm-hmm. This scripture has transformed my personal life. It's one of the reasons why I do what I do. Because when I grew up as an orphan, as an underprivileged child myself, lost my dad when I was 9, and we kind of went bankrupt. Not bankrupt as in we owed anyone. We couldn't have medical care, not even money to go to school. So I dropped out of school, and the fact that I came to the U.S. and went to medical school is a miracle on its own. But this scripture, it's supposed to be obeyed literally, and Jesus kind of showed that. And love your neighbor as yourself. Your neighbor is the woman in India who is dying out of HIV, and she has hopes and aspirations for her child. That you need to, is some children who are adopted still have a living parent, and the living in Africa too, and the living parent lets the child to be adopted because the living parent doesn't even have anything. If she had her own way, her child will not be leaving her side to come to America. Even look in America, many of the people who have children and give them for adoption here in the States are young women who Many of them regret years down the road why they did it, but the reason they do it is not because they don't want the child. Many of them is because they can't afford to keep the child. The child will ruin their future. And so when you as a Christian go and you go adopt the child here in Austin, for example, even within the same race, okay, the other child, the other woman that the scriptures say you must love as yourself is saying, oh, if I had money, I would keep my child. I want to be able to love this child and show her that I really love her, but I can't. For me to survive, I have to give her away. Now, what is the loving thing to do? Like to love your neighbor as yourself. And God, remember that all money that we have, we are stewards, and God owns all resources. If you are a rich guy, the most godly thing to do is not to say, I'm going to take advantage of you because you don't have any money, because you're weak and have no money. I'm going to take advantage of you and take the thing that you value the most because you can't take care of it. The best thing would be, I'm going to come and see how can we help this woman keep her child and still be able to go to school and have a good life so that later in life she does not regret. Many of the people no one ever stops to see what happens to the women who give their children away later on when they can't. Some of them can't bear to go see those children and tell them, I gave you up for adoption. So am I saying that it's always bad? No, absolutely not. I'm not saying it's always bad. I'm basically saying we have to love your neighbor as yourself. It's not. I totally have no intention of thinking that we can save anybody. If you talk to any of the people I work with, I tell them all the time, because many of them they want to go serve in Africa. They say, "Oh, I want to go save orphans in Africa." Some of them go work there for a year. The first thing I tell them is, I have never saved an orphan. I've been doing this for 8 years. We have done surgeries and people we've saved people from dying, but I've never saved one person. I can't even save my own self. So nobody who adopts, regardless of what they do, they can't even breathe on their own. They rely on God to breathe. So you can't save a person. But self-centeredness can come in various forms. When you start thinking, I want to build my own family, think at the same breath, how about the other person? Do they also want to build their own family, and can I help them? So many agencies, many people who have adoption agencies, they don't stop to think about these things, and a lot of the places where adoption is done, people are very corrupt. In Cameroon, for example, people are corrupt too. In most of Africa is corrupt, very corrupt. As in, you can't go into medical school without paying a huge bribe. You can't go and report a case where somebody is robbing you at the police station and you don't give a bribe to the police. As in, if a thief has a gun to your head and you call the police office will say, "Oh, sorry, we can't come because they're corrupt." In fact, in many African countries, it's not just Cameroon, Nigeria, wherever orphans come from. And this is fact. You could check. So there's a lot that goes on. So by the time a child comes to you, you don't know how many things have been done when sometimes the truth about adoption could almost discourage and break a person's sense. Like, should I adopt? My answer to that is yes. You should adopt, but you can't do what I wanted to do initially. Have zeal without any knowledge. The scriptures are clear. Zeal without knowledge is not good. And you can't please God by having zeal and no wisdom. So if you were to think to yourself and say and agree with the statement that adoption is not about the adoptive family, but about the orphan. If you agree with that and say if you have doubts about that, pray and research and establish in your mind, yes or no, adoption has nothing to do with what I want. Absolutely zero. Nothing with what I want. Adoption is like Jesus coming and laying himself down for us. Adoption is dying on the cross. You get nothing out of dying on the cross. Later, perhaps. But the act of dying is not for yourself or to do anything good for you whatsoever. Adoption is like that. Now, of course, are there is it when you do go into adoption with that mindset? Do you end up having people adopted people in your house to love and call your children? Yes, but that's but if you don't go with that mentality of I am adopting not because of my needs, you will adopt for the wrong reason because your needs determine what you get. You're going in it for what is good for you. So you will shop, you get it from the cheapest possible place. You will, and honestly, sometimes, okay, let me just share something with you that I hear all the time. I hear somebody comes to me and says, and I could show you a video on YouTube that I recently saw on this later on. I want a child that is 3 years old. I don't want a child that has any defects. I want a boy. It's almost like, honestly, it's almost like you're buying from a grocery store and you're saying, you're shopping. You're like, this is how I like it. Make my latte just this good. Honestly. And how many times do you have biological children and go to God and say, I want just a boy? You don't get to choose. When you have your own children, you don't get to choose.
I spent an awful long time praying you'd be healthy.
Yeah, and after you pray, God chooses what to give you. See, I like to see it. The Bible says children are a gift from God. You don't choose a gift. You choose what you buy. I go to Walmart to buy. I choose. I pick exactly what I want because I pay for it. But a gift, you don't get to choose. You just receive a gift. How many people go to adopt and just want to receive the gift? Very few, honestly. If people they couldn't choose what they want and get it, many of them wouldn't adopt. So you just start seeing as Christians, that, and I'm not saying that, honestly speaking, I'm going to be honest, just honest right now. Would I just be, if I want to adopt right now, would I just say, God, give me any child and I'll take it? I can't say that. Honestly, I wouldn't. I would want to choose. But that doesn't make it right. My wanting to do that doesn't make it right. That's why I haven't adopted yet. And there are other reasons why I haven't adopted, because the next question that we must answer, the next thing that we must look at is, if adoption is not about me, not about me building my family, not about me getting the kind of child I want, it's all about the child. Now that you begin to say, okay, if adoption is about the child, so I need to do God's will. God's will is that God puts orphans. He says God puts the homeless in families. He puts the lonely in families. So great. We know clearly God wants to put the lonely in families. The next thing we know is that orphans, their tears are a prayer to God. When they suffer and they pray, sometimes they see another child walk with their parents, or their parent loves them. They just wish in their heart, I wish I had my own mother and father. Okay, when a child in India is wishing a mother and father, you could guarantee that she's not wishing an American, black American or white American or Asian American mother or father. They're wishing another Indian mother or if you were like, just answer their prayer. Okay, just answer, like just answer. If they had a way of saying, they would say, I want a mother like their friend next door has, like their mother, exactly, like, talks like that. They would never choose a mother that they would have to learn their language, and they've never met. They look different. Am I saying that international adoptions are not godly? No. I'm just saying that when you think about these things, ignoring the reality, does not help at all. If you're, adoption is a serious thing. If you wanted to have heart surgery and you go to your doctor, you want him to tell you the good things about heart surgery, all of them, but you also want him to tell you every single bad thing about heart surgery, so you can make a good informed decision. A person who goes and says, I don't want to hear anything bad about heart surgery, it's not wise at all. You got to know every single thing and then choose if you want to have it or not. That helps you decide what kind of heart surgery you would get, what's the extent of it. And so something that people have to ask when they know that adoption is about the child, not themselves, is how can I truly, genuinely, without any self-interest, help this child get the best possible family that child deserves, even if that family is not mine. That is mature Christianity. Something I've learned is you don't need to be a Christian to get what you want. We all do that. People cheat and fight and kill to get what they want. James talks about that. James the apostle, he talks about that. But the mature Christian is the person who sees, okay, I would love to have this banana, but that person does not have a banana and they need it. That person does not have a banana. I'm going to give them what I want, because that is the Christ-like thing, laying down our lives for others. That person, atheists don't do that. It's hard. You need Christ to do that. You don't need Christ to, like, I used to think to myself, okay, you're a medical doctor in the U.S. You have, you have, even just being in the U.S., you don't even have to be a medical doctor. When you're in the U.S., you are 99% of richer than most people in the world. You don't even need to have anything, just being an American. Okay, you can go to Africa and choose what kind of child, exactly which kind of child you want. You could go choose two. You could, and bring. So I could use my money to get what I want. I could adopt 2, 3 children. Now, the thing is, what about the poor person from who's gonna give me their child? Because a lot of orphans a lot of children, even if they're orphans that have lost both mom and dad, they have an uncle that really would do everything to keep them if they could. It's not like the whole village dies, then they leave the orphan alone. It's like no one ever knows them, and so no one might want them. The thing that is stopping the people who want them is that their hands are not strong. They don't have the power to do it. So they're like, many times if they tell you when you go get permission to adopt, some people, they cry because they don't want to lose the child. They, even when they tell you, oh, nobody cares about this child, some people honestly don't come to care for the child because the child's needs are so overwhelming. They can't do. It's like, they themselves have an issue that the child just needs a lot, and they would want to be able to give all the child needs, but they just can't help even looking at a child. It's like a mother whose child is dying. They can turn away and say, I don't want to see my child die. It's not like they don't like the child. So, but there are also cases where people don't like the child, but not usually everybody doesn't like the child. So we have to balance these things and say, okay, now the child's interest and only the child's interest, no interest of mine. You say, so you look and say, in this village where the child is there somebody in this village who can take care of the child just as I would? Something that we don't know in the U.S. is that in South America, in Asia, in Africa, there are Christian families that are Christians just as mature as us. In villages, they are poor. They live in shacks. They work on the farm. They know, some of them are more mature Christians than we are. They know Christ like the real deal. How to be poor and suffering and still be a Christian. If many of us were poor and suffering, we would throw away Christ. so they are wanting to care for these orphans. So they, how did they feel when we just came rich and powerful and grab the children, take them somewhere else? Am I saying that you can't? You still international adoption is not good? No. But I'm saying there's a better way. There's a way of going in, not with your own self-interest, but going and saying, hey, I am a human being just like you people. God has I did not choose to be born a black person in America, a white person in America, an Asian American, but God chose me to be that and put me in America, the richest country in the world. It's God's choice that I'm rich and powerful. So I don't take credit for that. So you and I are the same. We are what we are because God has made us. So let me come and see how I can help you. God has given me a few dollars more and you don't. How can I help you? In the process, it's okay to adopt a child, but go with that mentality. There are people, yeah. So
Well, I think that's the right mentality, and I think that's what you guys do with Shaping Destiny and Missionary Mandate and your different organizations. There is that you, from what I've understand, what with talking with you, that you have sponsors for the children, and that way you can put them into some foster homes and use the money from America to help people over there.
yes,
And just us personally, we're able to have biological children, so we don't have to adopt to build a family. So we didn't come into adoption with the mindset of, okay, we have to build a family, so we're gonna go adopt because we have to. We came into adoption with the mindset of there are children that don't have homes. We have one. We can provide a good Christian home. So that's how we'd like to give a family to these orphans that don't have it. So that's kind of where we're coming from. I also feel like if we were going to build, have a big family, that if we were going to try to help every orphan, we would have 13 kids or however many we could adopt, but that's not where we're thinking right now. Our number of children that we're thinking right now is 4, but God could make that more. He could make it less. It's up to him. But I guess the reason why I chose the wording of building a family is because we're thinking of 4 as the number of children that we would have. So we're not going into it thinking that, yes, we have to build a family and we're going to go take children away from people that want them. We don't want kids that other people that have relatives that want them. If it's not the best thing for this orphan to be adopted by us, then we don't want to adopt that child. We want to adopt children that the best thing for them would be for us to adopt them.
Okay, let me ask you a question, and I am going to help you people adopt. That's my determination from the beginning. But I'm going to ask you this question now, which is a question I think you have to ask and honestly answer beyond any shadow of a doubt to really make a good decision to adopt. Now, it would cost you, without Shaping Destiny, it would cost you on average about 22 to 25,000. That's on the low end. Some adoptions, honestly, cost up to 40,000. Okay, just take us out of the picture. Say you never met us. Now, I could tell you right now that a lot of Christians are spending that much to adopt one child. Add to that price the psychological trauma of that they suffer and the child suffers being brought to a new culture. The question is, now if this child comes from India and there are local Christians, let me give an honest example. In Cameroon, we have a program we call foster care, not because it's foster care like the US. It's because adoption is not something that they don't have a word in the languages there for adoption. So when we take a child and give to a family and say, live with this child, they're like, this is our child. They're not thinking this child should go back. We call it foster because they don't sign any paperwork, but no one ever signs paperwork there because adoption. So it's really adoption in a way. Like there, if you want to take a child and adopt, just take the child into your house and start feeding and loving him, and that's it. No paperwork. So now, if you take 25,000 and give me right now, I don't all the money that we receive for orphan care, I get nothing from there and our staff done. I could put at least 50 children in African homes to be adopted that are Christian and will be loved. The psychological trauma is reduced. The culture stays the same. The children stay exactly in the same condition. And one thing that happens again is that our staff go every month, sometimes every twice a month, and they help these people continue to grow in their faith, discipling them and they grow. Many of them are mature just like we are. So why, if we are all God's children and we are equal, no one is better than another, no one's needs are better. The African Christian woman is just, and family is just like you people, the same before God. No preferences. No, even if you have money, you don't have preferences before God. Really, because the money belongs to God. So you're a billionaire, doesn't matter. You're treated just the same as a poor person. Why would we spend 25,000 to help one child, bring them all through that? Why we could use that money to help 50 different children, and also help disciple the people and all that. So you need to think about that and say, if you're just totally for the children, it has nothing to do with you and your desire. You have to answer that question honestly and pray through it and say, wow, that not one, it'll be helping the children. Two, it'll be helping meet the dreams of other people who want to help children and adopt, and they will grow in Christ. So you have to kind of so the issue that we usually have, that I have had in the past, was that honesty. I thought the best Christian house was mine. I used to like, I used to be so self-centered. Like, so the child needs to come to my home because that's where he'll grow to really be on fire for God. It's like, forget it. You think that there are children growing in Christian homes in Africa that are on fire too, and on bigger fire than people in the US, and they don't have any American dream to pursue. So I recently talked to a pastor friend of mine. He was like, the reason I want to adopt is because, I want to raise this child, in the fear of the Lord. I told him, hey buddy, you know about PKs? They call pastors' kids PKs. How many PKs turn out right in America? Like, why would you want to do that? Like, PKs don't turn out.
PK.
Many PKs. Oh yeah, we know the common thing is that many PKs don't turn out right. So like, why are you trying to think that bringing this child and raising it in your house as a pastor's child is going to turn right when they could just be great Christians living with an African Christian in the same village, where they grew up, no trauma, no problem, so am I saying this to say that international adoption is bad? No. I want people to adopt international. I just want them to go through all this and think one thing that we end up trying to help with with the volunteer project is to help people, instead of being people who just who do what I would have done before, just adopt and I'm done. I've saved 2 children and I'm a savior of 2 and I'm done. We help them at no extra cost to them. Say if they were going to raise $22,000 on their own to go adopt somewhere else, they come to us. We get them to start sponsoring a child for the first 6 months, at least one child, and communicate with this child, get to know the child, get their feet wet. We get to share this kind of encouragement with them and help them pick a project. They're going to raise funds and work for that project. I don't get to benefit a dime. I am volunteering my time to encourage and to help the adoption go through. We are all volunteering. They'll volunteer their time to raise money that is less than the amount of money they will adopt through the next cheapest agency. I don't know any agency that waives adoption fees like we do. Okay, and they will go, if it's to dig a well, they can dig the well and write their name on there, that dog by the Lani family for the village here, and right on there, they will take the money and go pay if they want. If we can help them, they will supervise the project. I don't ever have to drink water from there at all. It'll be their project. See, they would adopt cheaper, but they would have done something to help more people. It could be they would take a project and say, okay, my project would be to put 30 children in 30 different families locally. While it will still end up being less than the cost of adopting through another agency. At least, I like to put it this way. If I'm a rich guy I really like to eat something that I like, and I see that there are many poor people around, and I feel a little guilty that I should be taking better care of them. I feel better when I go buy them at least some food and just give a lot of people some food, and then I go sit and spend 10 times as much on my own food, and I feel a little better than if I just go buy something for myself and there's all the people who are hungry. At least if I buy them some sandwiches and give to as many beggars, poor people as possible, I can go to the fancy restaurant knowing that at least I've helped out. It may not be the best kind of help, but at least I did something. So, but the good thing is that when people work with us, it will not be buying sandwiches. You will be helping people families exactly like you adopt. So you'll be giving them the gourmet, the same exact gourmet food you're gonna eat, just for a price that is no more expensive than if you did it somewhere else. And that happens because we are volunteering. You are volunteering. We volunteer our time first, and all our staff volunteer, and we feel like approaching things that way. Okay, even though there are so many, it kind of, if when you do a thing like that, I don't know how God would see it, but at least if I were him, I would say this guy, at least, even though he adopted, his motive may not have been the best, but he did do something out of good motive. I don't know. At least it's better than just kind of going like that. That's the way I see it. The motives are a very hard thing sometimes for me to even, I have to check myself very much to discover my motives sometimes. So yeah, that's why we have the system the way it is.
And I think we really like that system that you guys have there. And I think that's why we've pursued Adopt from Africa more than we have any other agency, because you're so involved and you're not just, single-sided, and you have a broad vision and you're right on the ground with people. And
I really liked, in addition to financial, I liked the reasons you gave in that article where you talk about on your website about not why you don't have adoption fees. I thought that was very well thought out and addressed several issues that I hadn't even occurred to me. That the more I thought about it and what you said and what you wrote and why you don't operate that way, it just made so much sense that I was surprised I hadn't thought of some of those things before.
Yeah, so. No, it's I feel honestly blessed because when you write an article like that, you usually hear from people who kind of like think you're a jerk than from people who think you actually, because there's some people, that they don't want to hear the truth. It's too complicated to hear. They just want the easy lie or the easy kind of let things be the way they were. Yeah. So I really appreciate that.
I do have one other thing. With regards to how much adoption costs, I feel like it's easier for people to raise money if they have like a goal. Like we don't have $17,000 right now to just put down for adoption. And the only way we'd be able to get that much is by, selling things and trying to raise money and telling them why we're raising this money. Just going out and saying that, give us money so that we can help this thing in Africa that we've never seen and we've never been a part of. I just don't think people would really give money. But if they know what they're giving money for,
they might give money, but not necessarily as much money as I'm raising money to help adopt. And
I'm just saying that we wouldn't have that amount of money to give $17,000 to put, all 80 orphans into homes in Africa.
Okay, and I didn't expect you guys to have that because I don't have that either.
Right.
Okay, now the way the process works is that, okay, we honestly, we treat people who come to adopt as though they're family, and I know we hear this a lot. When you come to adopt and you start sponsoring children, okay, the Cameroon the law there requires that people go there at least twice. We like to have people that you end up going there twice. We like to have people who we will give you a project. So you're gonna have we'll work with you to come up with a project that you would, and if you do fundraising, you'll do fundraising in the name of our organization. The advantage is that it'll be tax exempt. Anybody who gives a check is tax exempt, and they don't have to write it to you if they don't trust you. And I'll give you more details on that. But the beauty of it is that instead of going there 2 times just to go adopt, you could go 1 time and go volunteer and actually be on the ground and hang and see projects and be involved on, whether it's for 2 weeks or whatever, and actually come back knowing how things are on the ground. You are involved. When you go there, we give you food for free. You don't have to buy food. You don't have to pay for a place to stay. A lot of the thing we see you as being team players. You're gonna pay your flight though to go there, but when you get there, you're not gonna be worried about a lot of the things that you will worry about if you're going to a different country. So we'll just have you come and see the children. It could be when you already know which child will be your own. That's a good thing to happen then. But if you do, it'll be like you don't act any differently around them. You kind of just, you're there to serve, and then that time will count. So when you don't, our lawyer will use that, and you just go back to take your child. But you actually get involved in serving. One of my goals for Adopt from Africa was not just to have another agency, or not just to have another agency that's cheaper, but hopefully that God would use that to make adoptions cheaper for people, but also make people more involved in serving orphans on the field and know many of the other needs that they have. My prayer is that by the time you come back, when you kneel down to pray for orphans, you are really praying because you know what's in your heart, that you understand. Yeah, that's it. So no, we don't expect you to go say tomorrow start saying, I want to raise money. No, I give money for me to give to this project I don't understand anything about. No, when you start sponsoring, and we'll match you with a child. We'll start communicating, knowing when you're doing your home study, when you're gonna complete that, and start seeing, okay, by the 6-month time, your application would be reviewed. If you sent it in early, then we'll review it 6 months from now. We start seeing, okay, if you are not in a complete rush, that's perfect. But even if you were in a rush, the thing is that the last couple that adopted from us, it took 3 months to adopt. International adoptions usually take at least a year. The fastest ones take at least a year from the time, not from the time you thought about it, at least a year from the time you applied for it.
Right.
And in fact, a year from the time you got matched with a child, not just the time you applied for it, because sometimes you apply for it, and it could take, for some agency, it could take months and months and months before you get matched with a child. It could take some people. It could take close to a year before you get matched with a child. For us, it would take at the most 2 to 3 weeks for you to get matched with a child. Wow. And the reason we're that way is not because we're some kind of superstore that just has them has a lot of them. It's that we work in the community. Our main call is to care for orphans. We have relationships in the community. This strategy that we have people do things in the community and also empower the community helps make it even more possible. When we take a case to court, the courts know who we are. They know our integrity. They know the sacrifice we sacrifice in the community. They've seen the things that we're doing. We're not just kind of sending children, out, because that many people in developing countries the elites, the educated people, they don't like that because that's like brain drain and taking people from their country. But when they see that you're really there to build, to serve and to really build the community, your things go through fast. But now, the disclaimer is that do not expect 3 months. You could get 3 months. Very likely that many people will get that kind of thing. But we still say 1 year, and we say 1 year to then surprise you and say, hey, it's been 3 months. Your child is ready to be picked up. If you want to go, you can go. If not, you can wait for a year. It's your choice. and have you say, hey, you know what? I'm going to go right now and be excited. So, because things still happen. A judge could be sick. Something could happen. And we no one knows. So we totally don't want to. And the 3 months is not the time that adoptions in Cameroon as a whole take. They take longer. It's just that when people know you in the community as an organization that is respected, that you're doing good, when you get in before them, they want to be a part of doing good, and so they find out what kinds of ways they can help to contribute to what you're doing.
Right, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Any other question that I can answer?
You answered my big ones, some of which Lonnie asked before I could get them out, but I tend to be quieter, more introspective, and she tends to be more outgoing.
I totally understand. My wife is that way. The only thing that I get to talk about a lot is when we talk about orphan care, because I'm so passionate that even though I don't talk very much, she can't beat me to that.
I'm picking up on the passion.
Yeah. So yeah, my wife, she's very smart, and many other things she gets to talk first. But yeah.
So you grew up in America, or partly in America and part in Cameroon, or?
I hope I hope you could at least get my accent to know that.
Yeah, that's gonna give you away, which is
Yes. Okay. I grew up in Cameroon. So the good thing is that the community where our main center is, I grew up in that community, so I know what people there think. I know how they think. I know how things work. And I've been in the U.S. for 12 years now. I'm a U.S. citizen now. I'm not a Cameroonian citizen anymore. So I also, at least, being a fellow citizen and having been here for 12 years, I did all of my college here. I did my college at Rice University in Houston and did my medical school here in Texas. I think a little bit, I may sound a little different, but I think a little bit like you think. So I could bridge the gap between here and Cameroon a lot better than most people would.
That's definitely a good thing.
Yeah, it's certainly a good thing. Yeah.
Well, we're from New England. I'm from New England, so I'm used to all sorts of accents.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, when you guys go to Africa, you'll be the one who has an accent.
I've been the one with an accent a lot, and in Ukraine and Russia, I got the weird looks half my life.
I spent 2 weeks in Liberia, and I was definitely the one with the accent.
Yeah.
And a little bit white.
And I kind of stood out like a sore thumb.
Yeah. It's accents. When you move around, it flips around. They get to ask me here a lot. Hey, you have an accent. Where's your accent from? I used to tell people, hey, my accent is from Jersey. They're like, Jersey? Doesn't sound like that's from Jersey. But when you go to Africa, when anybody hears you talk, they're like, that voice has an accent.
Oh, what's the language in Cameroon?
English and French are the national languages. So the area where we work, the administrative language is English. So most people there would understand English. If you went there and just spoke, they would understand you. You might need to speak a little slowly for people who are not used to speaking with outsiders. But most people,
British accent.
I can't do British. I can do Scottish.
yeah, no, the Cameroonian English has a different accent. More, my accent is not even Cameroonian anymore. It's somewhere between Cameroonian and Texan. It's in the middle somewhere. I don't know where it is.
That's a good mixture.
Yeah. So if I
Wow.
went to Cameroon right now and talked, people would totally know that this guy's this guy has some kind of accent that is a little is there. It's not big, but it's there somewhere. Yeah.
Another question regarding home care, home study agencies. Do you have anyone that you would be able to recommend we live in New Hampshire, to do a home study? I'm assuming it would probably have to be someone out of Massachusetts because they just have a lot more resources than New Hampshire seems to.
Yeah. We have somebody in Texas to recommend. We don't have somebody there, but it's not something that it's we have some other people who just look for their own people to do their home study. If the USCIS accepts your home study, we accept it too. So then there are not that many strings to it. Whoever is approved by the USCIS to do a home study is who you should do it with.
Now, the home study has to be country specific, correct?
Yes, you have to know the country, but Cameroon is not a member of the Hague or anything, so they don't really have any specific thing that Cameroon has laid out because they're not a member of the Hague Convention.
I called up Bethany Christian Services at one point and was talking to them about a different country and if they could do our home study for that country, and they weren't sure if they could because they didn't work in that country, and I wasn't sure if that's how it is with a lot of home study agencies.
No, that's not true because we've used an agency in Waco, Texas. We used it in Waco when we adopted the last two kids. And that agency doesn't do home study for Cameroon. They don't have anyone in Cameroon to work with, so they don't adopt children from Cameroon. The only children they've ever done anything for in Cameroon are the ones that they adopted through us. And they didn't do the adoption. They just did the home study, and we did the rest.
Oh, okay.
We have our lawyers on the ground. That we have a lawyer, not our lawyers. We don't need many lawyers to do that. We have just one lawyer, and he will handle the rest. He has assistants, but we just work with him. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So with compiling our dossier and everything, we would send it to Adopt from Africa, correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm. There's a long application on the website. You guys should print it out and at least start looking at it and thinking about how you're gonna fill it. It's fairly long. It will take you like 2 or 3 sittings to get everything on there. You send that. There's a $250 application fee. That's the only fee that we charge whatsoever. And the only reason for that fee is because we want people to at least think before they send us an application and expect us to read it.
Right.
Most people, when they have to write a check, they at least stop and think, do I really want what I'm trying to write $250 for? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Otherwise, they would just send us all kinds of things, and we don't have many staff to read applications. We only read an application when we've been working with a person and know that that they're serious. So that's the only fee that we done, and that has not been waived.
How many other staff is there that works with Adopt from Africa besides you?
Okay. Adopt from Africa is like one tiny portion of what we do. It's gonna grow. So to start with, we're not like some huge organization.
Right.
We're an organization that a person like me founded. so it's not. We're still growing, and even though we've been working since 2005, for the for the 5.5 years that I was either in medical school or in residency before I resigned, we were doing great, but we weren't trying to grow. Okay, because I didn't have any time to breathe. So we're actually growing. And then after I resigned and started focusing on this in 2010, in September 2010, I focused on training. I went to seminary school, and did seminary work, and I took leadership training because we know that we have a huge good future of growth and training people and all that. So honestly speaking, right now is we're like a plane that we've been running on the runway, and right now we're taking off. Like our wheels are in the air now, just right there. We have our training program, because part of doing our work well and having staff is what we've discovered is, if you hire people, especially in Africa where most of our work is, and where we need more staff, if you don't train them like really well, you have a really big headache trying to get them to work. So we have a training school right now. That's gonna start there in September this year. I'm going to be in Cameroon for 3 months in September, so I'll probably be really there seeing the kids that I selected for you guys, because I'll be there for 3 months going in September. And our training school is gonna start there. There are already at least 20 people who are gonna start training there. I told you about 5 from different countries who are coming to be trained and sent. So many of them want to work with us. So we're basically having to train people now and then employ them, because I couldn't even just tell you how much headache I've had. You hire people, it's almost, and then they have very good hearts, but no clue. And and so it's really bad. But so we're going to be growing a lot more when this training starts taking place. And we have a training school here in Austin. The training school here takes very few people. In June 5th, June 17th, we're going to be training 5 people in here who are going to work with us. Many of them are going to go to Cameroon to go work there for a year, and they're all from the U.S. A few of them would stay here. One of them is going to stay here to work here, and stuff like that. So that's how we're kind of growing. It's a good place to be part of our organization right now in some way, because in the future you'll be surprised, in a year or two, what God would have done.
That's exciting.
Good. Well, if you don't have any more questions, I'd let you guys go and sleep. I'm sure your dad is probably waiting for you to be done so you can sleep.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time tonight with us. We really appreciate it.
And it was nice to meet you.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, Andrew. I wouldn't call you Eugene anymore.
That's okay.
Yeah.
I would hold it against you.
Okay.
And when you get emails from Lonnie, I've definitely had some input.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Well, if you guys have any questions, don't hesitate to email me. Yeah, we look forward to God using you guys to do great things, and I'll be happy to see that happen and work to help you guys. Let God bring a child to your house, because that house would be the house that is not the best house in the world, but the house that God has chosen. That this house is the house I want this child to grow in, because I don't want you guys to get me wrong to think your house has to be the best house in the world. God picks. You're not the best guy in the world for sure to marry a woman like Lani. God just put you together.
I married up.
Yeah.
I definitely married up.
Yeah. God totally said, hey, you know what? I love Andrew. I want to give him Lani. And that's it. God is going to choose a child and say, hey, your house may not be the best house in the world, but I like that house. I want that child to grow in it. And that happens too. God does that.
Well, thank you again.
My pleasure. You guys have a good evening.
You too. We look forward to talking with you more.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.